Ladies and gentlemen, the goal in your life is not to figure out how to be comfortable in your mental prisons, but to realize that you have the keys to set yourself free. Hey everybody, welcome to How to Be Mesmerizing. It's Tim Shurr, and today in our Legend series, we have someone incredibly special. I am so excited. Patricia Fripp is with us today. Patricia, welcome to the program.
My pleasure.
This is such a delight. For anybody that doesn't know who Patricia Fripp is, she is extraordinary. She has helped launch some of the biggest names in the business. She was the very first female president of the National Speakers Association. She has been a legendary top 10 speaker in the country, and she's been all over the world, best-selling author. She's won all these awards, Speakers Hall of Fame, just an incredible authority on presentation skills and how to present yourself in a way that grows your business and your life. So let's jump right in. Patricia, what would you say is the secret to success?
Well, that is a very broad question. If I had to sum it up to a few words, it would probably be discipline, consistency, and longevity.
Yeah. So how did you develop your discipline? Were you born that way, or did you have to develop it? Because I asked that question, and I know it's broad, because I'm always curious where people are going to take it. And I've heard that word discipline from many people. And one of the challenges that a lot of people have out there is that they don't feel like they're disciplined. And just to tell them you need to be that way doesn't work. So we're trying to figure out what's the strategy that helps someone to develop, you know, that discipline and that focus and that motivation. So what was it for you?
Well, it might interest you to know, Tim, that I grew up in England, and I have one brother who is 1 year, 1 month, 2 days, 12 and a half hours younger than I am. His name is Robert Fripp, and according to Rolling Stone magazine, he is the 42nd best guitarist in the history of the world, living or dead. Wow. He played on David Bowie's Heroes. He has a band called King Crimson that last year celebrated their 50th anniversary.
Sure, yeah.
Growing up in England, now remember, this was at a time when nobody expected much of girls, especially in a small town in England. Mm-hmm. And I realized my brother was brilliant. He was always top of the class. For me, I was about 15th in the class of 30. And I thought, well, I'm not as smart as my brother. I'm probably not as smart as the other kids in my class. I never missed school. I received 100% attendance certificates for years.
Wow.
Never won anything else, but I always turned up. Mm-hmm. And then at 12, I thought, well, I'm probably more artistic than academic. And I decided to become a hairstylist. So at 15, I started an apprenticeship to be a ladies' hairstylist. Mm-hmm. And on a Tuesday night, all the models would come in, women would come in and pay 2 shillings, and the apprentices would practice on their hairs. All the other girls would do 1 or 2. I would do 5. And I said to my boss, can I bring models in on a Monday? Naturally, he saw I was so interested, and every weekend I practiced on the neighbor's hair. So naturally, I progressed faster. So I would say early on, it was the fact that I thought, well, I'm probably not as smart. However, I I practice more than everyone else. And I promise you, Tim, there have been two careers I've done very well at. Hairstyling. And then when I came to America, I was one of San Francisco's #1 men's hairstylist when it was a new industry. And then speaking that launched into coaching and training. I did not start either with great talent. And as my brother says, my sister is not backward about being forward. I am the first to tell you what I'm good at. However, I did not start with great talent, but what I started with, and this is important for people who want to compare themselves to other people. No, you start where you are. I had an interest in being good at both of those professions. I had a commitment to be good, and I learned from others who had been where I was and are now farther along, and I just had this do more than everybody else. I realized you don't have to be smarter than everybody else. You might have to just apply yourself more, and that paid off. My brother, who also is world class at what he does, he is the first to say he started tone deaf with no sense of rhythm. He is a disciplined, practiced musician.
Yeah.
And it might also interest you to know his company is called Discipline.
That is interesting. Wow. Well, I love that. That's a wonderful answer, because sometimes people are plagued by these beliefs that I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I won't be able to pull it off. Other people have more skills or natural talent than me. And what you're saying is, oh, no. If you show up and you keep working at it, then, you're going to be able to have the breakthrough and you're going to shine the way that you can. I actually have a story. I remember I was doing a seminar, and I had a couple of women that were in attendance, and we were talking about different speakers, and your name came up, and they had a story about you. And they said that they were staying at a hotel for a conference a long time ago, and they went into the gym in the morning to exercise, and they said they saw you, they knew you from the program, on a treadmill with your headphones in, practicing what you were going to say and your movements and everything else. And they said they just stood there and watched you on your treadmill, and they were so impressed that you were practicing and every move seemed intentional and everything you were going to do. And then when they saw you on the stage, it was like they had already seen the presentation, and they were so impressed by that. And I've always remembered that too. So
the best part to rehearse is on the treadmill. Yeah. And I even have written speeches on the treadmill. I'll get on and I'll think, now, what is the premise of my presentation? And then, when I get a good idea, I put my feet on the side and write it down. Because, Tim, when you are moving, it's connecting to your left brain so you can see the structure in the right brain. So often words come out of your mouth that you hadn't thought of saying because you're in the rhythm, and it gets it in your body because it's a matter of internalizing your speech, and when you're moving, it gets in easier. Well, that's great that I made an impression. I hope they keep perhaps trying to rehearse their presentations on a treadmill. For me, it's been the best practice.
Yes, I love that. That's wonderful. Yes, you're inspiring people when you don't even know it. So,
when I'm doing that, then this is important. I close my eyes, because you cannot be distracted by other people. And if your eyes are open, people will come over and talk to you. If your eyes are closed, you see, and you're going, they either think you're crazy, or if it's a speaker's convention, the chances are they know you're practicing, but they're not as likely to come over and touch you, because if you're moving fast, that could cause an accident.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, you can't even hide out in the bathroom anymore. There are no off-limit places. That's wonderful. All right. Well, I have the world's renowned presentation skills expert and authority here with me. So, Patricia, would you provide a few of the best presentation tips or secrets that you've learned over this extraordinary career that you've had?
Yes. I was interviewed by a dynamic gentleman, and after a half-hour conversation, he said, "Oh, this is all good. However, tell me, what is the number one secret of delivering a powerful, persuasive presentation?" I said, "Oh, there's no one secret." And then it hit me. A brand new Frippicism was about to fall flawlessly from my lips. And I said, although there is no one secret, if there were, it would be that your subject is of interest to your audience. Now, that is very simple. And of course, a lot of people say, well, I talk on OSHA rules or regulations, or people are forced to come to my trainings. Well, what we have to do, Tim, is take our message, and of course, we're delivering it from our point of view, our experience, our knowledge. However, you have to speak as an audience advocate and look at it from their point of view. And one way you can demonstrate that is to use you-focused language. In other words, you don't say, "I'm going to talk about," you'll say, "This is what you can look forward to hearing." Or, in your experience, how often have you, and I recommend my sales teams I coach or speakers to, as they go through their presentations, list you-focused phrases that they use or they want to put in their conversations. And this is exactly the same in your emails. For example, you might write up an email. I'm sending the proposal. And so you write it up and then you look at it, and before you hit send, you rewrite it from their point of view. Thank you for your interest in the Fripp speech coaching training. Based on our conversation, your priorities are attached. You will find the outline we discussed. So you see, you take and you have to build this into everyday life. Most of the sales teams that I work with, they have weak openings. It's usually, even if they're introduced, or even if these days it's a web-based meeting, they're on the agenda, they might be introduced, and what do they say? "Hi, I'm Patricia Fripp from the ABC company." Your audience knows. So I always suggest in a sales presentation, the first comment you should make would be about them. "Congratulations." And say something about this company or this team or this individual that they have a right to be proud of.
Yes.
And then don't structure that sales presentation around, "This is who we are, this is how long we've been in business, this is what we do." No, say, based on our last conversation, your priorities or your challenges or your objectives or your interests are, and everything you want to tell them about your company is structured around how it would solve their opportunities or problems. So that's one, it has to be about them. Two, we have to be specific. Specificity builds credibility. Many of my clients are brilliant engineers. I mean, they have more brains in their little fingers than I have in my body. I don't know what they know. However, it is amazing how I can help them with their technical presentations. And the most frequently asked question of all my clients is, if it weren't a thing, what would it be? For example, one of my brilliant engineers, as part of his presentation that was to be delivered at a customer conference, was, "There are two things people love about." And I said, "Well, if they weren't things, what would they be?" He said, "Innovative upgrades." I said, "There are billions of people in the world. What people love your innovative upgrades?" He said, "Systems administrators." Now you understand the quality of the communication between there are two things people love about compared to, there are two innovative upgrades that systems administrators love. Now, with that client, as with many, even if you are English speaking, you understand more what he's saying with specificity. At that particular conference, they had customers from 71 countries. English was probably their second, third, fourth language. Unless you are specific, your audience really does not get the impact of what you are saying. So specificity builds credibility. Here are some of the Fripp rules. If you can't weigh it, it's not tons. You do not listen to Jim Cathcart speak and get a ton of notes. You don't. You might have 5 pages of notes and 8 actionable items. You don't get a trade show, go to a trade show. Hey boss, oh, we got a ton of leads. How, if you had a ton of business cards, you would be out trying to rent a forklift. No, specifics is, Mr. Sales Manager, Miss Sales Manager, we made an investment of $10,000 on that booth. Of the visitors, we had 836 people that we tracked, that we scanned. 200 were our customers. Our internal sales force have already followed up with half of them, and we have 32 demos of our new software for them to see. We had 132 legitimate leads, and this is where they are in the process. That's specific. That you can manage. That will get you a promotion. And you don't get a bunch of ideas. You don't have a bunch of notes. If it isn't fruit, if it isn't grapes, it's not a bunch. So if it weren't a thing, what would it be? If you can't weigh it, it's not tons. If it's not fruit, it's not grapes. And you should never stuff. Stuff is rubbish and debris. And it's amazing, and we're not aware of what we say. This is why, if you're working at being more specific, I tell all my clients, the way you get to be magnificent on stage or in high pressure conversations or presentations or report to the board is to work on your everyday communications. And we will not improve what we're not aware of. You might want to record a rehearsal or your side of the conversation or your team meeting and then listen to it. And if you want to be more specific, you say to your team, if you hear me say thing or bunches or stuff, just ask me, what do you mean by that? If it weren't things, what would it be? You get to build in the, and it goes back to everyday discipline pays off in important presentations. Here's one other, and it is an expansion of the specificity. Some words, Tim, give you more information and meaning than the time it takes to say them. For example, I was working with a lawyer on a speech on modern day slavery. And I said, you have to tell the idea of modern day slavery from the point of view of a man, a woman, and perhaps a couple, depending on your stories and your examples. And within the context of one of her stories, she said, he promised her many things. I said, no, he didn't. He promised her a life of romance and adventure.
Nice.
And in the context of that story, you could understand why this young woman would leave the safety of her home and go off with this man. And you know, did not have a happy ending. But that is the power of words and word choices. And some of my coaching clients charge $25,000 for a speech before they come to me. And any speaker, or I would say any sales professional who, we have our core message, and then you adapt it for the audiences so they feel like you put this together for us because of how you personalize it. But take your core message that was live, not an edited demo video, no, live, and have it transcribed. Then you've got a manuscript of not what you plan to say, what came out of your mouth. And then you get a yellow highlighter and you mark every I, so that you can go back and think, is there a way I could begin with you or not have I at the beginning of the sentence? You're not going to speak and not say I, of course not. But you don't want to start every paragraph with I. You want to rephrase it. You might look at every non-specific, everything, stuff, bunches, tons, every kind of, sort of. You take them out, you make them more specific. Then you might also look at if it's transcribed, and you can use services where there's artificial intelligence or real people, both are very inexpensive. If you have a paragraph and it's one idea, your sentences are too long. Because what we have to do in any communications, Tim, is speak to be remembered and repeated. You know what you're talking about, your audience doesn't. Speak in shorter sentences. One idea, a sentence. So, for example, you might say, welcome to Monday's team meeting. As you remember, at our last meeting, we introduced a new initiative. Last week, I'm thrilled to tell you, we had 3 team members who excelled. John did this. Mary did this. Anton did this. So it's just a matter of taking what you're going to say and delivering it in a way that it will be easier for the audience to remember, which means you also have to pause in a way that the audience can think. Even when your audience isn't speaking to you, if you're on stage or delivering a web presentation, you have to give them time to think. So it's just a matter of, you make a statement, give them a couple of seconds pause. That makes sense. How often have you had the experience of? Yeah, several times. In fact, last week. Give them time to think what they might say if you were just sitting having coffee and having a conversation. Based on what you say, what do you think the audience would be thinking? And give them time to think if you can't see them or if they're sitting in an audience. Well, I, of course, could go on forever, but that's a few.
That was extraordinary. I mean, that was really extraordinary. Wow. You just illustrated, it was multi-layered, because you just illustrated the very point you were making by doing it, by being very specific, by speaking in a way where it's one point at a time, and then making it you-oriented, and then focusing on how to make it memorable. You know, your Frippisms and your bunches and your, oh my God, your tons. I love that. It's so memorable, so descriptive. So good. That was really, really good. I was captivated. So,
what, are you ready for another?
All day long.
One of the most popular subjects that I would say, certainly I get asked for, and so do all other speakers, and that is business storytelling has become a skill that's identified for many leaders who are transforming their organizations. And many of my presentations now, and we of course are in a time of shutdown and COVID, I tell all my clients, and all my presentations, I don't mention that word, because anytime you say that word I mentioned that I'm not going to say again, people get depressed. For I talk about leadership presentations in challenging times. Because there will always be challenging times.
Yes.
2 years from now, any story or any example you use about this challenging time will be appropriate then. Anyway, so let's look at storytelling.
Okay.
There are some principles in storytelling, whether you use it as a client example in sales presentations, whether you use it to engage your children, or whether it is any type of in-person or online presentation. So let's look at a handful. The first is, stories are about people, and we like to hear what they say. The principle is, don't report on the dialogue, deliver the dialogue.
Yes.
For example, I was talking to one of my clients, Bernard, a fabulous leader, and he was talking about corporate citizenship. And this was at a point in his speech that if this were a movie, this would be the second act climax. So I knew he was passionate about that, but this had to be really a high point of his speech. And I was not about to say, your speech is getting a little dull, because this was a brilliant man and I'd never met him before. If he was a long-time client, I'd be more comfortable. So instead I said, Bernard, how do you explain corporate citizenship to your children? He said, it was the day after Christmas and I sat both my children down and said, you are very lucky children because you have generous parents and even more generous grandparents. Perhaps you'd like to take one of your gift certificates or one of your presents and give them back to us, and we'll cash them in and take the money and give to children who don't have homes. He said, I was so proud of my 14-year-old son. He said, Papa, how much do I give? Because I could give you all of my savings and all of my pocket money and all of my Christmas presents, and it wouldn't be enough to make a difference. How much do I give? And Bernard said, I told him, oh, you never give it all. You just give enough that it hurts a little. If you transcribe that, it's almost all in quotation marks and it takes less than 1 minute to tell. If I was reporting on the dialogue, I said, well, I was talking to one of my clients and asked him how he would explain corporate citizenship to his children. And he told me about a conversation he had with his children where he suggested, it's not a story, because when you deliver the dialogue, you can put the emotion in. And I tell you, Tim, every time I write a donation or check to the Salvation Army or any of my other charities I support, I think, let's add another $50 because they need it more than I do.
Oh, that was spectacular.
So you see, the power of a story is that people see it. And when you add the dialogue and they understand the characters, the emotion, it stays with you. Now, if we go to the practical, everyday, my life, your life, speaker's life, is working with salespeople. And the best sales technique is to tell a story about a happy, satisfied client. So you say is, oh, Patricia, this sounds good. Can you give me a client I could call? And I said, well, yes. Well, if you'd have called Pat Wynn, she would say. And we all have the good customers. So when I'm working with the sales team, one of the principles, and they all laugh at this comes from one of my friends. He'd be a great guest for you. I'm going to recommend him to you, Michael Haig. He is a story consultant in Hollywood. And he says, stories need to be true, not 100% accurate. And salespeople always laugh at that. And you're not making it up. Your story has to be true. But what happens when you are giving a case history in a sales presentation or a conversation with a client? What you are doing is shrinking time. Because in a sales process, and some of my clients, it takes them a year from the initial conversation to giving the presentation. So what you do is you have to shrink time. So I had a client, oh, it was really a friend of mine, who called and said, Patricia, help. As you know, I'm a great salesperson one-on-one. However, I have the opportunity to deliver a 10-minute presentation to a convention committee who's coming to our hotel. Now, what he did was say help and clearly articulated his problem. Most of our clients do that. And very often, the salespeople who are telling the stories, you're not going to say, well, we got this lead from a trade show and our internal people followed up with them and they did an initial conversation and evaluation and then I stepped in. No, you shrink all that and into one conversation. Tim said, help, and clearly articulated his problem. Now, we need to know who Tim is. So Tim, who was the senior vice president of marketing with a $2 billion software company, said, so we need, every salespeople, everyone selling their services needs 5 stories. 5 stories that represent all the different communities they serve that they might be talking to, in a way that when someone says, well, that sounds good, who else have you done it for? Or in the structure of your presentation where you say, your challenge is to do this. And this is very similar to our other client who was in your industry in Cleveland. And just like you, they have a workforce of 200 people and their challenge is. So you see a story because our prospects see what it's like going to be working with us through the eyes of other people just like them. That's why you need stories. So 1, we shrink time, we get to the point, and the first step is the situation, the help. So imagine they said help, even if you don't say that. So when we first talked to Tim, he said, deliver the problem in the dialogue of the customer, who was the prospect then. Then the solution. So what we did for Tim is very much what we would recommend we do for you. It was a 3-step process. First, we do this, 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 this. Does that sound as if it would work for you? Then you go to the success. If Tim were here, he would tell you, we would not have believed it possible that you could get these results. You see, when you use the words of your happy customers, you can say about you and your service what you really couldn't say about yourself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, it wouldn't sound too good if you said, you will not believe it possible that we can transform your sales force within 3 months. However, if you're a happy customer, now obviously if this person followed up with them, they would say it. Mm-hmm. It has to be accurate.
Yes.
It's just, you see, we shrink it. So you could tell the story in 3 or 4 minutes, and it's a great case history. So 1, get to the scene late. Make sure we know the backstory of the character so they feel, oh yeah, just like me. And part of the backstory, if you say he's been a senior vice president been in the industry for 25 years. Now we know this is a seasoned person who makes wise decisions because of the amount of time in the industry. Therefore, their choice to do business with your firm, the prospect is thinking, oh yeah, well, I'm sure if he's had 25 years experience, he checked other firms as well, and he selected this one. Yeah, probably they feel more comfortable. Doesn't mean it'll make the sale, but it's building a layer of comfort.
Yeah.
And that's one of the values of developing stories.
Wow, that is excellent. I mean, that right there gives you a very powerful strategy that if you would just take, when people take the advice that you just gave, just that advice, which I'm sure you have so much more, but if they just took the stuff that you've talked about so far.
Now, slap your hand, Tim. Slap your hand.
What did I do?
Instead, take the stuff.
Did I really?
Yes,
I'm going to go back.
Did. You see, you don't know it.
That's a good one. I'm glad you called me out.
I make all my executives slap their hands in front of me, and I do it as well. So it hurts me as well as it hurts you.
All right, so I'm smacking my hand. When you take the
now, what you need to do is immediately rephrase it to get it in your body. So you say, if our listeners took the information on stories you just told us. Would you like to rephrase that? How often do your guests critique?
Yes. So if our listeners decide to take these extraordinary presentation skills and storytelling secrets that you have just provided, it will transform the communication that they have and the outcomes that they experience. You have been able to provide such specific action steps that it really is powerful. I'm going to start using this right away, and I imagine that anybody else that applies this is going to experience some pretty spectacular results. So thank you so much for sharing such specific high-end content, because it's excellent. It's really good. And for calling me out. I love it. So I'm going to go back and make sure that if there's times where I need to smack that hand, I'm going to be doing it.
You can tell our friend Jim Cathcart, who recommended me. She called me out.
She called me. I'm going to text him right after this. Jim, she called me out. She had me smacking my hand. He'll love it. He'll love it. Wow. Well, let's switch gears just a little bit, because you obviously are just a spectacular trainer. So let me say that in addition to you being a spectacular trainer, you've traveled around, you've had all these amazing experiences. What's one of the coolest adventures that you've ever been a part of?
One adventure early in my career, this was in the 1992. I went on a 2-week speaking tour of Australia with some other great speakers. One of them, he is no longer with us except in his recordings and our memories, Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn was one of the most magnificent, I guess you would call him motivational speakers ever. And in 1975, when I first went in business for myself, every month, I used to drive to San Jose once a month, that's 50 miles there and back, to listen to him deliver the same content, and I paid $250 for the cassettes of exactly the same message. Now, when you think what's free on YouTube and podcast is unbelievable. And then to be on a program and travel with him, that was very exciting. And there were other great speakers, Pete Johnson, Ed Foreman, who is still alive and well and kicking in Texas. And he always talked about making the most of every day, having a magnificent day every day. And he lived his message. I tell me, he'd call me and get me up jogging with him every day at 5 o'clock in the morning. We have a day off. We would go from activity to activity to activity. And it is wonderful being around people who really live their message, our heroes who are as nice as you would like to think that they are. So that was a wonderful experience as a younger woman. Now, what I noticed, all the other speakers gave exactly the same speech every time. I used the same framework. However, I had a different opening or close. It was the same framework, but I used different examples to keep it fresh. Just a different point of view.
So when those are amazing experiences to have and hang out with all these amazing people and to have that time with Jim Rohn. I mean, I just think that's amazing. I'm just curious, what do you think of the term motivational speaker?
There was a time, and when speakers and being used at conferences and meetings were not quite as normal. Anyone who spoke, they called them motivational speakers because that's just the phrase. I would say that in general, every speech has to be motivational. It's how you deliver it. One of my Frippicisms is there are no boring speeches, there are only boring speakers. And I made this statement at a conference, and this was the conference was on celebrating apprenticeships. And it was a governor's conference in Ohio, and they were looking for a successful business person who was a speaker who had served an apprenticeship. Well, the Speakers Bureau said, how about Patricia Fripp? She served an apprenticeship to be a hairstylist. Went on to be successful in her own business, etc. And they thought this was great because this was in the early 90s again, and it was still many industries were male dominated. They wanted to prove they were modern thinking, so that was very good for me. Anyway, so I delivered a keynote, and as I have always done, Tim, I would always deliver at least one breakout as well while I'm there, and this was on presentation skills. And I made that statement, and the guy in the third row put his hand up. He said, I speak on a boring subject. Well, it's not that you can't prove me wrong, but I'm going to go down fighting. So I brought him up. I said, what you talk about? He said, OSHA rules and regulations for 8 hours. And I said, give me one OSHA rule. He said, you got to wear your safety goggles. I said, tell me a story of one time one person did not wear safety goggles. He told me. And I say, now let's tell it from the point of view of his wife. Open your presentation with, imagine you are a 22-year-old wife and mother of 2, kissing your 24-year-old husband, the sole support for your family as he goes off to work on a construction site on 39th Street opposite Kroger. And as he is drilling through concrete to put a pipe, a big chunk of concrete comes out and hits him in the right eye, and he's not wearing his safety goggles. They take him to hospital. 2 days later, bring him home. You nurse him back to health. Now, how do you feel when you kiss him goodbye, knowing he's going to go back to the same site to do the same job with only one good eye, and the chances are he might not wear his safety goggles? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to OSHA rules and regulations. You know them. You've taught them. However, let us review why they are so important to your companies and the insurance claims that you do not want to have because your crew don't live and work the way they should. So obviously some subjects are more open to be more exciting than others, but find some dramatic examples, look at it from a different point of view, and reinforce the importance, the health, the welfare, the safety, and the financial claims against them if their crew get hurt. And the personal stories that are a result of the not wearing their safety goggles or whatever the rule is.
That is gripping. I bet when you were standing in front of that audience and you said, welcome to the OSHA rules and regulations after that story, that people were just like, wow, yeah. They were witnessing something extraordinary, something mesmerizing. Oh
well, but you see, and you pointed this out, Tim, you can't make a statement unless you can prove it with a specific example. Because that's why most conferences I speak at, I might be talking about presentation skills, but then I do breakout sessions where I bring the audience up with their presentations to put the principles into what they are saying. Just because most people, oh, well, I'm not a professional speaker. Well, outside the privacy of your own home, all speaking is public speaking, even if it's only to your own team. There's no private speaking. And the principles that the speakers you interview, the principles we use, are universal. They work in every presentations, not just a motivational speech on stage.
Yeah. Yeah. The best programs are where you can take it and apply it, you know, and as opposed to it just being able, you know, the speaker can use it because of their personality, but you're not giving stuff that's personality driven. You're
giving you said it again.
I did. Oh my gosh, naughty. I don't
say
know
it
what
again.
I said. I'm gonna
the advice that you are giving, the principles you're giving, which were?
Oh, yes, instead of the advice. Okay.
You said right. STUFF.
Naughty. Okay, I'm gonna have a really sore hand today. and I love it. So thank you. That's good. All right, so now I'm going to be even more aware. I thought I was already aware of what I was saying. Now I'm going to be even more. So this is so good. So you gave the a clear description of what makes a world-class keynote and specifically a breakout session from just the average breakout session that you get. Your breakout session is where you actually, it's interactive, where you're bringing people up and now we're applying what we have learned. You're applying these presentation skills and these principles and telling stories and making it personal so that when you go home, you actually, or you go back to the office, you know exactly what your plan is and how you're going to apply what you've learned. And that is world class because usually breakouts are just small keynotes from people that didn't get, you know, the keynote job.
Well, they shouldn't be because the nature of a keynote speech is to introduce ideas at a higher level of abstraction. A breakout session should be more hands-on and specific, perhaps reinforcing the ideas, but much more hands-on and practical. Whereas a keynote can be funny and entertaining and inspiring and obviously has to have good stories and some key specific points. But in a breakout, the idea is you roll up your sleeves and you go to work. You make it practical.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm so excited about incorporating more stories and telling it from the perspective of the people who the stories are about. You know, of these first-person stories, instead of just describing the story on the outside, bringing it alive. I love that. I love that idea. For my keynotes, I was making it interactive even then, because people, you know, support what they co-create. And if they feel like they're a part of the experience instead of just being lectured to, it makes it more exciting and it increases retention. and creates buzz. And so this has just been an absolute delight. Last question for you. Unfortunately, I'm sad because I wish this could go forever. But if you could go with all the wisdom that you have back to England when you were 10 years old, and that little wonderful, beautiful little girl that you were, what advice would you give her based on all the experience that you've collected over the years?
I would have told myself you're a lot smarter than you give yourself credit for. However, still keep up the good, consistent work habits.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, maybe there was a reason why you had to think that maybe you weren't smart enough, because it developed your incredible work ethic and your gumption to go at it. Of course, you might also go back, and if every time she thinks that she's not smart, you have her smack her hand. You are brilliant. You are brilliant. Oh, I do have one more question, just real quick. What was the experience like being the first female president for the National Speaking Association? What was that like for you?
It was very exciting. It was a great honor. I'm not a political person. It was not a goal that I had set for myself. It was just the association executive thought this was the 10th year. It was probably a good time, and I was on the board, and one thing led to another. But it was a great experience.
Yeah,
I'm sure. It is good to be in because obviously I had run some successful small businesses. However, I did not have a corporate experience, as some speakers come from the corporate world. And so it was good to learn leadership and take training to be a volunteer leader. So it helped me understand leadership, and I focused on learning parliamentary procedure to run board meetings. And when you understand how to run good meetings, you have a lot more power in meetings than you realize. And you know how to solve problems that other people were giving that they get away with because the people leading the meetings don't understand parliamentary procedure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, well said. That was wonderful. Patricia, thank you so much for such a mesmerizing interview, for this incredible education, and for all the personal feedback for me as well. You're just an absolute delight, and it's obvious, if this is the first time that anybody's ever having the privilege of being able to listen to you, I'm sure they're just absolutely blown away. So thank you so much for being a part of this program today.
And remember, Tim, you always have to have a last words linger. And I would say for anyone, whether they know me or not, they need to remember Fripp, F-R-I-P-P. Go to my website. You'll see free resources on presentation skills and storytelling. If they want to have a trial of my online virtual training, everything that has taken me 40 years to learn in one cost-effective place, click on Fripp VT. But I would say to everyone, I hope you will remember me, Fripp. However, much more important than remembering me, remember what Fripp stands for. Frequently reinforce ideas that are productive and profitable.
Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. That's so good. I can't barely stay in my chair. That is just outstanding. World class. There you go. Thank you, Patricia. Everybody. Yes, everybody. Oh my gosh. Wow, right? That's why she's the legend. That's why she is the best in the business, and holy cow. So make sure you head over to fripp.com. I'm going to have all the links in the show notes. Take advantage of her virtual training because it's exceptional, and you can start digging into it today, and sign up for all her resources because it's just gold, and it's waiting for you to grab a hold of it. Take what you've learned, put it into action, and make your life mesmerizing, and we'll talk to you next time. Hey, would you like more free tips on how to be a mesmerizing leader? Then check out mesmerizingleadership.com, and also hang out with me on Facebook, facebook.com/Tim Shurr. Thanks so much, and make your day a sure success. Hey, it's Tim Shurr. Would you like to learn my best secrets for how to be mesmerizing? Then head over to www.survivingtothriving.me. That's www.survivingtothriving.me. I'll see you there.